Back-to-back MVPs for Leo Messi. We discussed the battle for future pro soccer in Cleveland. We've got so much new team and stadium news. It really is coming out of our ears. That and more on Friday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kickaround, where we talk about the world's game developing right here in the United States of America. My name is Robert Kerr, local soccer guy. His name is Jason Davis, radio soccer guy. And together we dot the map of the American soccer landscape, the ever-changing American soccer landscape. There's so much fractious stuff going on. It's hard to keep straight, but we will do our best. How you feeling, Mr. Davis, this morning?
I'm good. I'm ready to go. It's Friday, and we've got there's always something. I just finished up a new edition of my newsletter, which you can find at Jason Davis Soccer Eagle. Just search that in your Google machine, and you will get the website. It's over on Ghost. And I headlined it "Dot the Map" because I was writing about what we're doing here on Morning Kickaround, but just also on this sort of abundance movement. That's a loaded word in modern American discourse, but we are sort of in an abundance movement when it comes to soccer in this country. Dot the Map is the way we're processing it because it does look like these teams are popping up all over the place. Obviously, we're adding new members, MK Ultras jumping in. Shout out to Josh, who is a new member of the channel. You can be like Josh for just a couple bucks a month and become an MK Ultra, get access to the Discord. So much going on there. I mean, the Discord has become like the newsiest place for this stuff. People are really going out there and finding these stories, and it's things that we sometimes even miss ourselves initially, Rob. So I'm very thrilled to see that community growing.
Yeah, definitely. Plenty of action in the Discord server. $3.99 a month. Become an MK Ultra. You can do that or for free. Subscribe to Morning Kickaround. Help us kick those numbers up, or just tell your family and friends about the show. Speaking of family, shout out to my aunts. All my aunts popped in. We're on a cross-country trip, and they came in, so good to see them. Shout out to the aunt sisters. If you are a member of the channel, or if you cruise the Morning Kickaround channel, you see there's a couple poll questions up there. We'll revisit the results after the show, but we asked about the bell tower investments in USL. What do you think that means for the USL moving forward as we start the show? People are middling. It's a moderate boost. And then
I think people are taking a wait and see approach to that, which is probably the right mentality, right? We don't know about what that investment means. It does seem to be related to all this push that USL is making. Clearly, they wouldn't be involved if it wasn't D1, Pro Rel, abundance of clubs, that kind of stuff. But I just want to let people know we are working on getting some answers, or at least talking about what the important questions are around the USL plans involving D1 and Pro Rel. We are planning some videos around those topics, some discussions. If you have questions, right? The Discord has been asked this already. The MK Ultras themselves directly have been asked in the Discord for their questions. If you have questions for USL and their plans, drop them in the comments on the videos so that we can make sure we get to the right people and try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, indeedly do. And we also have a question regarding the excitement level, the temperature gauge of the audience of Messi's extension, and getting more Messi mania here and more on him in a moment. But we have some goals, as always, a 5-member or super chat goal. And we might do something a little bit extra at the end of the show. So get your super thanks in there. We're already 1 in the books. Thank you to Josh for becoming an MK Ultra. All right, should we get to the show?
Let's do it.
Let's get to the show. Let's kick Friday's long balls on a jam-packed episode of Morning Kickaround. Welcome in here, long balls, as we open the show here on Friday, September 26th. I'm Robert. He's Jason. Similar to where we were this time last year when this show kicked off, we talked about Messi and becoming the MVP and maybe shutting down that conversation. I think we might be here again. Messi scoring 24 goals, 11 assists in just 23 games, racking up 2 more goals and an assist against NYCFC in his last outing. Has Leo Messi closed the case for this year's MVP? And is he going to be the league's first ever back-to-back winner?
Well, he'd be the second ever multiple MVP winner because only one player has ever won 2 MLS MVPs. And Rob, I quizzed you before the show and you did not come up with the answer. Are you still thinking about this? Do you still need a minute? You have any guesses?
So when you first posed this, I guessed one Landon Donovan. The award is named after him, but you shrugged me off. I guessed Wando, wasn't Wando. So my thoughts are a little bit scattered at the moment, and I'm sure I could get to it, but I don't have it just yet. And it's not
Let
Beckham
me
either.
let me give you a hint. All right. This individual won his MVPs in the year 1997 and the year 2003. And I believe in the year 2003, when he won his second MVP, he was 40 years old. Do you have a guess now? Any
Was it
guesses?
Stoichkov?
It was not. No, Stoichkov never won an MLS MVP. I will give it to you because I don't know that you're going to get there. Preki. Preki won 2 MVPs in Major League Soccer. The only player to ever do that. Why it's not called the Preki Major League Soccer Most Valuable Player Award, I don't know. It's called the Landon Donovan Award. Donovan was the biggest name, American name in the league for a long time. But again, only one MVP. Nobody's won more than one except for Preki, and nobody's gone back to back. And I really do believe it is over. Lionel Messi will go back to back as MLS MVP. And here's why. Okay, here's the goal numbers as they currently sit in Major League Soccer. I don't have the assist numbers, but know that he is up there in that category as well.
Messi's got
Messi,
11 as it stands.
24 goals, 2 more than Denis Bouanga, who's having a very hot run right now, combining with Son in Los Angeles. In fact, right now, for me, LAFC is the most dangerous team on the board in Major League Soccer, and I would be very concerned about them if you're a Western Conference team trying to come out of that division, or if you're an Eastern Conference team who might see them in the playoffs or in the final, rather. Yeah, and look at those minute numbers. Denis Bouanga, 23, almost 2,400 minutes. Lionel Messi, less than 1,000. More goals, fewer games started. He. Now look, Pablo is saying that they're going to give it to Messi because of marketing. The man has earned the award, Pablo. Let's not do this. Like, yes, I understand the cynicism that he's the biggest name in the league. Why wouldn't they want to give him the MVP for the marketing elements of this? But man, he's having the season you need to have to win the MVP again. And, a name that's not on this goal list
Yeah,
that
I
is
was going to
certainly going to be in people's heads, Rob, is Anders Dreyer for San Diego. And he deserves a lot of attention and he deserves MVP votes, but I don't think he's beating out Lionel Messi. Now, to Pablo's point, I don't know if it's about marketing, but the people who vote on this award are going to be swayed by the fact that it's Lionel Messi. Like, there's a popularity element to this, right? There are things that kind of they go into the big soup of what a MVP voting scenario looks like. And one of those things is the name recognition. Anders Dreyer has had a fantastic year. He deserves to be mentioned. So has Denis Bouanga. He deserves to be mentioned. Sam Surridge, who was leading the Golden Boot race for a while and may still have a shout in that race. He deserves to be mentioned. There's Ederson having a great season for FC Cincinnati. But man, Evander rather, Ederson. Evander is having a great season for FC Cincinnati. But Lionel Messi is going to win this award. It's over. It's done. Se acabó.
You think it's a down stunk for the greatest of all right now? Because I mean, it's hard to argue against it. His just recent run, he hasn't been held off the score sheet since that bad loss on the 13th of September when they were shut out by Charlotte 3-0, and then since that quote unquote bad outing, he scored against Seattle and got an assist, scored 2 and got an assist against DC United, scored 2 and got another assist against NYCFC. So, one game off the score sheet, come back with 5 goals in 3 games, which is just unreal. And I'm glad you touched on buyer there at it, or Dryer rather,
Dryer.
San
Dryer. Mm.
Diego, because I mean, that team has been such a surprise to everybody, and then he himself, as an individual, has just kind of really blown the doors
Mhm.
off. And would San Diego be leading the Western Conference without the contributions of
No,
Andrew
of course
Dryer?
not. Right. And that's the thing. Like when you talk about valuable, we get into that debate about who's more important to the team, Andres Dreyer or Lionel Messi. I mean, I don't know that really there's much separation there, but there are scenarios in which a player is not as important to his team because there are other stars around him and he has a great season and all those things. And of course, Messi plays with Suarez and has had a decent year, not the same year that he had last season, but has had a decent year. I wanted to bring one more visual aid to this argument,
Okay.
and it's this from FBref. If you are a soccer fan, you probably go on FBref every now and then. It's hopefully this is visible for everybody watching at home, but you can see this is comparing Lionel Messi to other forwards in similar leagues. So I think it says 14 similar leagues over the last year. This is the way the FBref does this percentile wise. Look at this. Non-penalty goals, expected, shots total, assist, all these. He's 99th percentile in everything in the attacking section of this except for touches, where he's only 91st percentile, and progressive passes received, where he's only 96th. But everything, and pass completion is 94. Maybe he takes a little bit of risk every now and then and doesn't complete all his passes, doesn't complete as many as some other guys. But this is bonkers. He doesn't do anything defensively, but you don't need him to. This is insane. He's the MVP, Rob.
Yeah, you kind of really have to stretch the imagination and your own personal grievances, perhaps, against them to make an argument against Messi for this. Interesting note that another poll that we've got on the Morning Kick Around YouTube channel is asking what your reaction to his extension, his contract extension, to stick around longer in Major League Soccer, and 37% of the respondents said shrug emoji. So maybe a little bit of indifference coming from our poll listeners or poll respondents. Interesting to see, but definitely leading the way for the first ever back-to-back MVP of Major League Soccer, Leo Messi. Big surprise, right?
Yeah, shock that this is happening again.
All right, moving on. Long ball number 2. And this kind of speaks to one of our bigger segments later in the show, as far as all the developments happening in USL. But one of the leaders in the United Soccer League's USL Championship, Louisville, one of the first lower league teams to have their own stadium, and a really nice stadium at that. They report that they have formally applied for Division 1 status.
Yeah, this story at WDRB out of Louisville. It
Madrid.
reads Louisville City FC formally applied to compete in the United Soccer League's planned Division 1 Men's League. Club owner Soccer Holdings confirmed to Louisville Business First, a WDRB media partner. There's a quote in here from James O'Connor, who runs the club. He is the Soccer Holdings president. By the way, former Orlando City manager, or I think he was also the manager at Louisville for a while before moving into that executive role. We're pleased to see the league take a positive step like this, adding both investment and credibility to the organization. We look forward to taking our club and community to the next level. Now, we're noting this because it indicates that the process is moving along and that certain clubs have taken the step. Now, this is not one of those things where like there's a ton of transparency around this. This is one of our questions for USL, Rob, is how is this working? What is the process for clubs to try to get into the first division? Obviously, we know there are professional league standards that currently apply to a first division outdoor men's soccer league in America as dictated by US Soccer for it to be sanctioned by US Soccer. We have seen and heard rumors of discussions happening between USL and US Soccer around those PLS elements. And I don't know that anything is going to get changed necessarily sort of officially. We know waivers can be given. If you have too many waivers, you make a mockery of the standards. But there's something happening here. This is percolating a little bit. And of course, Louisville would have been on your list. I think it was on our list when we did our first ever video speculating about which clubs could fit into a Division 1 when USL launched it. Their stadium holds enough people. It is a professional soccer operations. I don't know about the metropolitan area number and any of that. I'm not sure I'm up on how big is Louisville. I guess that's what we need to know. How big is Louisville and the metro area?
How big is Louisville? Indeed, let's get that in the chat. And I'm curious, I'd really like to get our hands on what that application looks like that the teams are filling out to apply for this first division. Is there questions outside of hitting the PLS standards? Is there like kind of an ambition question there? Like if you make it, what sort of investments will you make, or what is your vision? I'm curious if there's anything outside of like, do you
Yeah.
hit the things that you just said? Do you have the stadium? Do you have the population?
Yes. Right.
Hopefully, I want to see if there's anything like club specific, or do you just check the box marks
Yeah.
that are
Look,
needed for PLS standards?
perhaps USL will have their own standards. Now, look, it doesn't really benefit USL to be too strict, right? They want to launch a first division. They don't want to be like, well, you don't have.
They're walking a tightrope of not being too restrictive, but not letting teams that are flaky in either.
Right, exactly. Like there has to be some sort of filter. You have to have some standards. You have to have a test of whether or not you can be a first division team because ultimately they want that league to succeed and they want the clubs within it to be properly run and all those things. But as I wrote today on my newsletter, this is kind of just again, this is a trying to kind of paper the room, just throw everything at it that you can. By the way, urban area, they have 1 million. Thank you to Bryn rather. I just looked that up as well. That's fine. They're going to be fine in that regard. I don't think they have any issues meeting that PLS. So that element of the PLS, it is, and there are things that apply to the league that don't apply to the specific city or clubs. Things like having enough teams in certain time zones and things like that, which obviously USL will either have to juggle or maybe those are the things that are a little bit more up for negotiation with US soccer when it comes to figuring out how to populate their league, which needs per the PLS, again, I don't know how malleable this is, needs 12 teams in their first season.
Got a question from an MK Ultra Todd. Does this mean the pyramid starting in 2026? No, sir, it doesn't. I'd say 2027 at the very earliest, but that doesn't seem very
My
realistic as it
my
stands.
guess, and I don't, I think we've seen some things that are kind of in passing mentioned here. I think we're talking, and again, part of our question for USL is, will you roll out the first division before you roll out Pro Rel? Now, and again, Soccer Night Detroit, this is what I was talking about. Pro Rel is being planned for 28, Premier Division 1 being planned for 27. They can certainly stand up the first division faster than they can work out the Pro Rel situation, right? Those mechanisms for how teams are going up and down, how many teams are doing that. Are you doing playoffs? Are you doing, what is the standard there? And again, an element of this too is if you go from the second division to the first division, within the PLS, do you meet those standards? How does that, and as Too Many Burgundies has said, PLS were written with a closed league model in mind. It'll be interesting to see what USSF thinks about possible adaptation to allow for pro rel integrity. Because if you have a team that wins promotion from the USL Championship to Division 1 and their stadium holds 10,000, what do you do if the team that goes down is one of those teams that helps you meet the standard? Right? So again, how many waivers per year? Not just sort of like in general, but how many waivers each season? What kind of adaptation do you need to that point from season to season as teams go up and down?
Yeah, the fundamental structure of it all needs to be changed and reconciled because part of the PLS is like having certain amount of teams and certain amount of time zones. And if, clubs are moving up and down around, there's no way to ensure that, there's no teams in the Western time zone or the Pacific
Yeah.
time zone. And so, yeah, interested to see, really hope that we get some information back from USL regarding these kind of details. There's certainly a lot of unanswered questions as we stand. Moving on to long ball 3, as we're wont to do on Friday morning live shows. It's the Fab Four. We pick out the top 4 picks in American soccer to carve into your valuable weekend time. As it goes, I go second, Jenny goes third. Chat, you get your pick in for fourth. MK Ultras, the members get a little bit of priority, but you can duke it out in the chat for the most compelling fourth pick in the Fab Four. But top pick, you, Mr. Davis, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Major League Soccer. I'm a sucker for Cascadia. I know we've been doing this for years now, but and it's not the hottest one because Portland and Seattle are always playing that Cascadia rivalry is the peak of the Cascadia triumvirate. But we do have a Seattle Vancouver situation in MLS this weekend. And I think this is interesting for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Vancouver is trying to stay in that fight for not just the top spot in the West, but also in the race for supporter shield. And they had the draw against Portland, which was a little bit disappointing for them. They needed the Brian White late equalizer to get there. They are viewing those as two dropped points because look, Portland's not as good as Vancouver, and when you have that match at home, you're supposed to win it. So they are now a point back of San Diego with a game in hand on San Diego. They are 3 points back of Philadelphia, who has a supporter shield lead at the moment. Everybody's keeping an eye on Miami because Miami has games in hand on everybody. And if they win out, they will win the supporter shield. That is mathematically a fact. So some of this is not out in your control. But man, you have a chance here against the fifth place Sounders team that really looked like they were heating up at the right time, Rob. We thought Seattle was maybe going to be the team rolling into the playoffs with all this momentum behind them. They won the League's Cup, all of those things. But they've lost two in a row now. They lost to Inter Miami in that trip down to Fort Lauderdale after the League's Cup with a rotated team, and they just lost to Austin. That doesn't look good. That was a late winner for Austin in Texas. So Seattle wants to get back on the winning side of things. And Ryan Gauld could make his 2025 season debut for Vancouver this weekend. He hasn't played at all. I think Thomas Mueller is back from a groin injury. Brian White is obviously back after the goal he scored midweek. So there's some things happening for Vancouver that make them very fascinating.
It's wild that Gold hasn't played, and it's one of Vancouver's best ever seasons, and he was considered one of their best players up until now. And it's just wild the year turnaround. When one of our first episodes we did a year ago, we're talking about, is Vancouver's time, or is the Whitecaps' time in Vancouver short lived? Are they going to get sold? And they went from one of the most forgettable teams to one of the most interesting clubs in just one season. Out of nowhere, they're near the top of the table. Had an amazing start to the season. Had some tournament runs. And then they signed one of the most famous players on the planet. Wild turnaround for Vancouver in 2025. But my pick, Fab Four pick number 2, I'm going to go Major League Soccer as well. Chicago hosting Columbus Crew. This is the 8th versus the 9th in the Eastern Conference. I was at the Columbus Crew game. They drew last weekend. They drew 1-1 with Toronto. There was definitely some anxiety in the stadium last week. Columbus, obviously outstanding last year, had a pretty good start to the season this year and have kind of been waning as the season goes on. They looked very short-handed in the attacking third, and they're getting caught up by their old rival, Chicago Fire. I don't think they're like an original early days MLS rivals. I think with the addition of more teams and Chicago being irrelevant for quite some time, that rivalry has been a little bit getting a little bit dusty, but maybe rivalry renewed this weekend as both teams fight for their playoffs. Columbus trying to stay in and Fire trying to break in out of their Nowheresville.
I do think that Columbus is probably safe to at least make the top 9. Their gap on New York Red Bulls is 7 points. Now, it's possible they get caught. The Red Bulls have the Hudson River Derby this weekend, so who knows there. Obviously, NYCFC got romped by Miami midweek, so they're going to try to bounce back. But, I expect Columbus to be in the playoffs, but it is a surprise to see them drift all the way down to 8th where they would have to play the play-in game. They're not playing the level of soccer we're accustomed to for the Crew. And, Chicago they've been up and down. It's been win, loss, win, loss, win. But there is an opportunity here for Greg Berhalter and his team to not only improve their case to make the playoffs, but kind of build their confidence with that. I think it's a good pick, Rob.
All right, let's bring in producer Jenny, as we're wont to do on Friday mornings. Bring in our third pick of the Fab Four. Welcome in, Jenny. What you got for us?
Good morning, friends. I'm going to go down to the USL Championship and pick Detroit City against Louisville City. That is Saturday at 7 o'clock at Keyworth Stadium. It's always fun when these two kind of like marquee franchises in the USL get together just to kind of see these very well-established clubs play against each other. Bit of a talent discrepancy between the two right now. Louisville City is kind of steamrolling their way towards the USL's regular season points championship. So they're going to want the points in order to secure that. Detroit City, on the other hand, you really don't know what they are. This is going to serve as kind of a measuring stick game for them, where they sit against the league's elite. And two, they really need the points in the hunt for the playoffs. They're sitting in 7th right now and only really hanging on to a playoff spot by a few points there in the USL Championship's Eastern Conference.
All right. That's a good pick.
Yeah, that's a good shout indeed. And I believe Louisville knocked Detroit out of the playoffs either last year or the year before. And Jenny, give me a nod. Has Detroit ever beat Louisville? I don't think that's the case. I know they've had some high-profile losses, like the playoff loss.
I do see 2 wins according to Fat Mob. It has
Those are
happened
great
twice.
games. I've been to a couple of those.
Last year, September 22nd, so just about a year ago, Detroit won at home against Louisville. So at Kerr Stadium, there was a red card in that game for Louisville that obviously gave Detroit a little bit of an advantage, and it looks like they beat them back in 2023 as well. So once a year,
so they've gotten
once a year. Now they do it in 2025 and make their case for the playoffs.
All right, so Fab Four, that's the top 3. But the 4th pick is the chat's. MK Ultras get priority, but the chat, let's see what you got for your suggestion for a top game here in American soccer. Going to the Discord server, shout out, become a member. Our goal, as it is, 5. We're one of 5 new members. Andy on screen saying USA versus New Caledonia. Not sure what that is. Is that the U20 World Cup?
Yeah, I believe that's
the Discord
the
server.
U20.
Ryan Schmelzer, he's shouting out Chattanooga Red Bulls versus Union Omaha. A big one in USL. I think that's League One there.
Yeah, it's League One.
On screen, Portland Hearts of Pine versus Texoma, or Philly versus DC to get Philly remaining at the top. Those are
small chance.
Shouts.
Small chance I'm going to make it to Audi Field to see DC and Philly. Small chance. I still got to work. I still got to engage in negotiations, with the powers that be, if you know what I'm saying. So there's a possibility though that I could make it out to DC to see that one. And Philly. Philly's kind of scrambling a little bit, right? We got to figure out what's going on there so they can maintain their spot atop the Eastern Conference. I mean, the win over the Revs, I don't think was the kind of thorough victory you would want at this point in the season. So there's that. What else we got?
I think we got one more from Soccer Night in Detroit. He's shouting out New Mexico and Lexington, top 5 in the West. Lexington to be in the home playoff placings with a win. So that's a pretty good shout. So to pick this 4th game of the weekend, we got New Mexico, Lexington, Chattanooga Red Bulls versus Union Omaha. And I think there was another one in the mix there. There's some shouts for DCFC versus Louisville as well. Paul, he gets in the chat. Welcome on board, Paul. We got Gotham versus Portland. So there's quite a few games in here. What do you think the ultimate one is here? I mean, we're preferential to New Mexico. Lexington, maybe?
Yeah, that one's an interesting one. I guess we can make that the Fab Four. I mean, again, everybody gets their say. I do want to shout out what Paul said because Portland and Gotham are tied on points in the NWSL standings right now. So there's a battle there for jockeying for position, as we always say when it comes to playoff places and seeding. So, yeah, good stuff.
Huey shouting you out. Got to get the not the press pass, but the marital weekend pass.
There was no reason to put that on screen. Like there was no reason to say to. I mean, people understood what I was saying without Chris having to be so direct with it. And no, I'm actually planning on going as a fan if I go to that game. It won't be a press pass situation. So maybe even hanging out with the supporters and the supporters end at Audi Field. And if you are DC based, or maybe you're coming down from Philly or whatever, I don't look for me. I mean, I'll be there. Maybe I'll be there.
All right, the last weekend of September, the first, the first weekend of the fall. It is the Fab Four are Seattle versus Vancouver, Chicago versus Columbus, DCFC versus Louisville, and the wonderful choices. Hard to pick one out of that bunch from the chat, but plenty of great action lined up here in North American soccer. We got about 1 minute before we're joined by a guest, so I'll remind you, we're looking for members. We are looking for subscribers and looking for folks who just want to spread the word. I've seen a number of our MK Ultras post in on Blue Sky and a couple other things, giving a shout out. Thank you, anyone, for spreading the word about this show.
We may have missed a couple of new members. I know we shouted out one already. Jason Hoover became a member within the last 24 hours. So shout out to Jason. And Jacob as well became an MK Ultra. Yeah, that's good stuff. Thank you guys. We
3?
appreciate it.